The sound of doors being hastily pushed open echoes through the precinct as Detective Stephen Briggs rushes inside. Startled by the sound, Detective Eric Carter looks over to see his partner making his way towards him, sweat covering his brow with a manila-colored folder in his hand. Doing a speed walk, looking around the precinct like a hunted man, Detective Briggs makes his way to his partner. Briggs walks up to Carter, panting like he's run a marathon. After he arrives at the desk, he places his hands on his knees to catch his breath. While he's doing this, Carter starts to speak.
Jeez, man, where have you been? We're supposed to be working on that case with the woman found dead tied to her chair.
Noticing that he won't get a response out of his partner anytime soon, seeing that Briggs is still gasping for air, he continues.
Oh yeah, that spider that we saw at the I.E.A. facility? I've never seen anything like it. I've tried looking it up online, but the closest thing to it is a Goliath tarantula. But they look nothing like that thing that we saw.
Carter is about to go on when Briggs holds up one hand, telling him to stop. Man, I really need to work out more, Briggs says in between gasps of air. Listen, man, I've got something way more crazy than that spider. With that, Briggs raises the folder in his hand and shows it to Carter. Carter inspects the folder. It looks just like your everyday run-of-the-mill folder, but the only thing that makes it stand out is the logo in the top right corner. It's the telltale I.E.A. logo, with the 3 capitalized letters, all layered on top of one another. It's practically unmistakable. Carter looks up at Briggs, wide-eyed, and says,
How the hell did you get that, man? And why do you have it?
When he realizes that Briggs wasn't going to give him an answer immediately, he asks in a stern voice,
What did you do?
Nothing. It's nothing. I simply just followed an I.E.A. scientist until he went home, waited outside for his house for a while, and then I broke into his car. Carter's now wearing a shocked and angry look, and is about to say something, but is cut off when Briggs continues. Okay, I know what I did was super illegal and way out of line, but trust me, once I show you what's in this folder, it'll be worth it. With that, Briggs cautiously opens the folder, revealing its contents, and starts reading. Report by D. Shaw. Creature name, the Stag. Height, approximately 200 centimeters. Weight, approximately 230 kilograms. Appearance, the Stag is a tall albino red deer with a coat of fur that is completely spotless, even though it's in the wild, with large antlers, much larger than your average red deer's. The Stag is an odd creature. We're not sure how old it is, but assume that it is rather old due to the size of its antlers. This is of no importance though, because what seems to be the most important thing about this creature is that it's an omen. A terrible fate seems to befall anyone that comes into contact with the Stag. For example, one of our most famous cases among staff is the case of Jacob Sherwisher, also known as the Green. I'll not be going into detail on the Green, as it already has its own file, and this will be focused on the Stag. Now back on topic. The Stag seems to wander around wreaking havoc on whoever it comes into contact with, for no apparent reason. Listed below are some cases that we caught while doing research on the Stag. Case 1. Sarah F. Happily married for 18 years, mother of 3. She was out on her morning run, making good time through the woods, when she stumbled upon the Stag. It was standing in the middle of her trail. She stopped dead in her tracks, staring the creature right in the eyes, holding its gaze for a solid minute. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a group of 4 mountain lions attacked the woman and tore her apart, each one grabbing a limb. Not only was the sight in and of itself gruesome, but it was very out of character for mountain lions, seeing that they are solitary creatures. Case 2. Sometime after that, a young woman by the name of Lucy H. had a run-in with the Stag. It was just like the one before, staring into the animal's eyes for minutes, then suddenly the creature turned and walked away into the forest. After that, Lucy went along as usual. We followed her for the rest of the day, watching to see what fate would befall her. We watched her for weeks with nothing happening. Out of pure boredom, Some of our staff took to placing bets to see who would get closest to the way in which the young woman would die. None of us even came close. After a few more days of following, we saw that she'd bought a ticket for a trip to the Bahamas. Now everyone who hadn't placed their bets yet either said that she would die in a plane crash, she'd get eaten by a shark, get hit by a jitney, or drown when she went to the beach. Once again, not even close. After picking the agents that would follow Lucy, which was hard seeing that all of the agents were fighting tooth and nail to basically get a paid vacation to the Bahamas, we had our duo ready. After about a week of Lucy going around and seeing the sights, a large majority of our staff started to think that the stag was just a normal animal, due to the fact that Lucy was still breathing. But their opinions changed when it finally happened. On that fateful day, Lucy took it upon herself to go to the beach once again for the third day in a row, as the lucky agents that got to go on the mission sat by watching her, sipping coconut water. Lucy, clad in her bathing suit, made her way to the crystal clear water. Suddenly she stopped, then lifted her foot and started to inspect it. A small trickle of blood ran down it. Lucy had apparently stepped on something. And suddenly, out of the blue, as the sun shone without a cloud in the sky, a shining spark of lightning ripped its way through the blue sky, lighting up the area and striking Lucy directly in her head. After our agents on the scene snapped out of their sudden shock and rubbed the stars out of their eyes, they made their way to the body of Lucy H. When the corpse of Lucy H came into the frame of the camera our agents were using to show us what was going on, what we saw before us was an awesomely gruesome display. Lucy's body was a burnt, steaming mess. Her usually light brown hair was now a tangle of black burning strands. Her green eyes were nothing more than a steaming pile of mush hanging out of her sockets. And the rest of her body lied in a heap, while some of her extremities still twitched. Everyone that was watching the live feed was in shocked silence, seeing that there was not a cloud in the sky, showing that the omen of the stag was not to be trifled with. Case 3. Brian S. was casually sitting in his room, playing video games when he saw the stag. He was in utter shock when he looked over to see a massive creature peering in at him from his window. As like the others, Brian held the stag's gaze for minutes, then all of a sudden the stag walked away. Later on that day, Brian and his family were visited by another creature that we just came upon, that we are now calling Mr. Punctual. This creature is an elusive one, that we've not been able to follow, unlike the stag who seems to not mind the aerial drone that we have watching it. Mr. Punctual is a being that only comes at a specific time, and that time being 10 o'clock exactly. We have no idea why he comes at the time that he does, or where he even comes from. There's also no rhyme or reason as to why he does what he does. He just appears, unlike this case though when the stag was involved. As we watched Brian's house, we weren't sure as to what was going to happen, or what to expect, but we weren't expecting Mr. Punctual, seeing that this was our first encounter with the creature. As our drone hovered over the house, we watched in curious excitement to see what would happen. And right before our very eyes, as the streetlights flickered, there he was, Mr. Punctual. His tall form wavering from side to side. Then he made his way to the house. We lowered the drone to get a better look. It was a brutal and efficient massacre. Mr. Punctual made his way into the house and indiscriminately slaughtered every living thing in sight. It was odd though, seeing how lackadaisically he moved when he was outside of the house as to when he was inside. It was so fast and efficient that none of the family members got to scream. We had decided to take the bodies of the family after Mr. Punctual was done, but after he left, we noticed that he moved to the streetlight that was in front of the next house. Then he disappeared. We decided it would be best to sit back and watch to see what would happen next. We weren't disappointed. As the week went on, the creature would go on to slaughter every single family on that street. Each time he'd come at 10 o'clock exactly, with the slaughter only lasting 3 minutes every time. The only family that survived was the last one, and that was due to one lucky kid. We have not found a reliable way to predict where Mr. Punctual will pop up next, but we have gotten very good at covering up the places that he's been and silencing those who refuse to stay silent. The passage above concludes the most recent cases of the stag coming into contact with people. Below will be our trials with trying to deal with such a powerful entity. We have decided that the stag is not something to take lightly, and it is too dangerous for the sake of the company to walk freely. We had decided to eliminate the threat. Attempt 1. Our first attempt was with our elite squad of mercenaries. We gave them the location of the stag, and they were on the scene within minutes. They found the creature standing motionless in the woods, with its back turned towards the squad. When I gave the order for them to take out the creature, the stag's head spun like it was a doll's. This caused the men to freeze. Suddenly, all of the men were now staring into the stag's eyes. They stood like that for minutes. Then all at once, the men dropped their weapons. Then they formed a line, one after the other. The only one that wasn't in line was the man that was in charge of the unit. As the men stood in line, stock still like statues, the head of the unit pulled his knife and started to cut his men down, one by one. We watched in horrified intrigue as the man slashed throats, disemboweled, and gouged the lungs of his men, while none of them even moved to run. They all just stood there, as if the carnage before them was of no consequence. At the end of the slaughter, only the leader of the unit was left. He then moved his hand and brought a grenade up and shoved it into his mouth. Then he pulled the pin. After the eruption of red mist and guts had finally settled, the only thing that stood in the silent forest was the stag. After seeing that the men on the scene could not get the job done, we decided to use a manned robot. We stood around the worker piloting the robot, watching in anticipation. When the robot got to the location, the stag stood again motionless, but this time it was looking directly into the camera. As soon as the worker piloting the machine saw the stag, he became non-responsive. His order was to shoot on sight, but he sat there motionless. As soon as the worker saw what had happened, he made a move with the controls. As soon as his hands touched down though, he slumped to the ground and started to convulse. Later on he was pronounced dead from a brain hemorrhage. After that, the rest of the workers just stood by and watched. Suddenly, the worker that was manipulating the robot started to speak, but it was unusual and robotic.
You have made an attempt on me once before, and once again. Another assault will not be appreciated. This is your only and final warning, humans.
After the words were spoken, the man proceeded to fall forward on his desk, with trickles of blood rolling down his eyes, nose, and ears. After we did an autopsy, it was as if a firecracker went off in the middle of his brain. After that, everyone decided that it would be best to leave the stag alone. But I would not allow myself to be threatened by some overgrown albino deer, so I took it upon myself to eliminate the threat. I created a program that would recognize the stag. The program was not unlike facial recognition, but only it was for this creature. I then downloaded it onto one of our drones that was used for aerial assassination and set it on the hunt for the stag. Hours later, when I had made my rounds around the facility, I was called by one of the guards that was watching the security cameras. I was actually surprised to see the stag standing in front of the facility carrying the drone that I had sent out in its mouth. It then dropped the drone and stared directly into the camera, right at me. Suddenly the building started to shake. It was not unlike an earthquake. Thinking fast, I made my way outside and walked up to the stag. Then I spoke to it. I will not be recounting what I said to the creature, for I have no need to, and the staff of this facility can be far too nosy for their own good. In short terms, we are now on thin ice with the creature. No one that works for this company will ever make a move on the creature. Not that I believe that anyone that works here is that idiotic. But if for some reason someone does, consider yourself fired. Not from your job, but from life itself. This now completes the file in the creature, the stag. File written by D. Shaw. Any further updates on the creature will be added as needed. Briggs looked up at Carter and closed the folder while saying, "Now do you believe me that there's something wrong with that place?"
This can't be real.
What? I literally just read one of their files.
I know, but you don't think that the I.E.A. is some super secret shadow company. They make antivenoms to save lives and cures based on animal byproducts.
I know that this is hard to swallow, but we have seen weird things from that company. You have to admit that.
Yeah, you're right. and this file really does look legit. So what are we gonna do with this information? Report it to the chief?
Of course not. I broke into someone's car for this info. I am way out of line. Plus, I'm pretty sure that the chief works for I.E.A. His wife is some big shot in the company.
So what are we gonna do?
At first, I thought it would be best to post all of this info online, but if they're as organized as they seem, they'll shoot it down before it even makes a splash. So we're gonna get video proof.
I already know the answer to my next question, but I just want to hear you say it out loud so that I know you're actually insane. How are we getting this video proof?
And with a big smile, Briggs says, "We're going in." Hello once again. Thank you for watching my video. Now before I get into my usual outro, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Monsters in My Mind for lending his voice to portray the role of Eric Carter. He makes great original horror stories, and if you like my channel, I know for a fact that you'll like his. The link to his channel will be down in the description below. Please check it out, and while you're there, please hit that subscribe button. And while you're here, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It will be greatly appreciated. I'd like to thank all of the new people that have subscribed to my channel from my last video. It means a lot. Now, as usual, my important links are in the description down below, and feel free to leave a comment if you need anything explained in the video. So thank you once again to Monsters in My Mind, and thank you for watching. And don't forget to come back next time, when I bring you another graphic tale from a world much like your own.